Okay, I think we are live. The H1B guy here, and today another round of the H1B guy live, unedited and unscripted Q&A 3 covering the H1B visa, S386, and more. But before we get started, if you are currently watching this stream, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and hit the like so that helps with the YouTube algorithm. I'm also going to ask you if you can to please subscribe if you haven't already to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. It helps me to produce more content like this for you. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that the H1B Guy does offer consulting services. One of the things that I'm finding is that right now people are looking for peace of mind. And with my experience and expertise in work authorization, documents, and evidence space, I'd love to hear how I can help you. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right into the Twitter Q&A for the day. And of course, if you have any questions for the live stream here on YouTube, I'm going to ask you to just post that in the comments in the chat, and I will get to them over the course of the stream. So the first question is from at EVGuy7 on Twitter. And before I read the question, I just wanted to personally thank EVGuy7 for all of your support and kind words and our interaction over the last few months. I really just appreciate it. I know you've thanked me numerous times, but really, I have to thank you. I just am honestly tickled silly that people like listening to me ramble and talk about a very controversial issue in immigration. And so thank you very much for your support. It motivates me to keep going and keep doing things like this. So to your question, White House is planning to revise the definition of specialty occupation for H-1B. What would that look like, and what should it really be? EB-2 requires specialized, but not EB-3. Would they drop EB-3 or EB-2 or both? I think to answer this question, we've seen the memo, right, that was produced by DHS. And one of the things that was interesting about it was sort of redefining what is a specialty occupation. And so, what is a specialty occupation, right? Well, it is someone who meets specific job requirements, right? A lot of times it's a minimum years of experience, 5 years, with a particular technology. I'm going to reference technology here, but if you think about medical professionals as well, 5 years of practice as a gastroenterologist, or for example, in IT, 5 years of software engineering experience using Java, Spring, MVC, Angular, okay? And so someone like that has a minimum. We always talk in minimums when we talk about the occupation, whether that be the specialty occupation for the H-1B or whether that be perm labor. It's minimum requirements, okay? And so right now, the way the current language reads for H-1s as well as for the EB-2 category, okay, 5 years of minimum experience with a particular technology, and then a bachelor's degree. Okay, so that's the first sort of equation there. The second one is 3 years of experience or a master's degree, U.S. master's degree or higher. Really, the advanced degree. It has to be the equivalent of a U.S. master's plus 3 years of experience. That's to qualify for an HCAP lottery H-1B or for the minimum requirements for the EB-2 perm labor. So why do I cover all of this? Well, I think EB-3 is a category that could potentially go away. I also think that if you look at a lot of the rumors that are going on out there, and we'll cover more of that in the live stream, I think there's a possibility that the employment-based preferences could be totally overhauled. And so what would that look like? That I think that's to be determined. But what I think you've seen is a very much a tightening, really, of the microscope as it relates to the definition of what a specialty occupation is and what those individuals do. So we always go back to STEM sort of being the outline, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think if you work in any of those four fields, specifically hands-on, right? I'm not talking about functional because that's where we get into sort of the analyst descriptions, which have not been viewed very favorable from Department of Labor and USCIS is highly technical or specialty. So I think you'll see the STEM, but it also goes down, and you've seen this term a lot, specialty knowledge. So that goes back to the years of experience and being able to verify and validate that. So, great question. I hope I answered it, but what I think you will see is really it's going to be primarily around STEM and then those minimum requirements of 5 or 3 years with a bachelor's or a U.S. master's equivalent. I think you'd see EB3 completely eliminated. But I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of that's to be determined. There's been a lot of interesting movement that's happened over the last 90 days as it relates to the H1, and you can tie all of that back to the presidential proclamation, in March as well as the one in June, the travel ban one specifically. So the next question here, any idea when we can expect merit-based executive order? So I want to show this one, and then I'm going to post a couple of more because the answer to this one and sort of the next two all really are going to go together because I want to talk about the dominoes. All right, so here's the next one. What's special about the upcoming visa bulletin? Can you please educate us about how and why family-based green card can affect the green card backlog? Okay, and here's the last one. Maybe if you get a chance, can you discuss this? And here's a link. This is to a law firm here. You'll see it right here, who wrote an article talking about the unused family-based visas. So here's what I want to cover, which is this. There's been a lot of rumors out there circulating that started really the end of last week. And this week, we've seen a lot of people questioning, where's the visa bulletin? As I talked about, the visa bulletin for September as well as August were the same exact dates. There was no forward movement. So why is that, right? You start to question, okay, we've seen that happen over the last few years where there hasn't been any movement, but not to see any over consecutive months really begins to create some questions. And now here we are, September 23rd, with no October visa bulletin. And then you start to see the rumors that were circulating last week. And what are those rumors? Well, there was somewhere being estimated, allegedly, around 100,000 in family-based preference green cards that are currently unused for the fiscal year of 2020. And so what I wanted to talk about is the total allotment for green cards, what that number means, and what that could potentially, the impact that it could have. Okay, so there are 140,000 employment-based green cards that are issued for each fiscal year, but there is a 7% country of origin cap on that 140,000. So if you're from China or if you're from India, specifically the two countries with the largest backlog, there's a 7% cap. And that 7% cap means that 9,800 individuals each year are awarded final action green card. Okay. So if we talk about the family-based preference number and what that is, 226,000 annually, I believe is the number. I don't operate with family-based preferences as much, so I'm not as in the know. But what that means is the same thing, 226,000 family-based preference green cards for fiscal year 2020. Now, what's a family-based preference green card? Okay, this is not children. This is not spouse. This is parents, uncles, brothers, sisters, cousins, okay, that are sponsored by U.S. citizens. So that number is completely different than what an employment-based preference is, which is an employer spent thousands of dollars to certify the necessity for that individual as it relates to their business. Okay, and they also certify that they're going to pay and maintain a prevailing wage determination based on the Department of Labor. Okay, so a lot to sort of unpack there, but if you think about the estimate is roughly, if you look at the article, it says 250,000 potential employment-based preference green cards for fiscal year 2021. So let's peel that back a little bit and what that means. Well, it means that if that were the case, there'd be roughly 17,000 plus employment based green cards available for individuals from China and India and a couple of the other countries that may be in the employment based backlog. Um, because there is still the 7% per country cap. Now, what happens if there are unused out of that pool? Well, then they're applied to the next year. Okay. So that means that if there are unused, so let's say there's 250 that would be put into fiscal year 2021, not all countries use their full 7%. Those left over or unused then are rolled into the next fiscal year. Okay. So it isn't an immediate remedy to the backlog. It does double the per country availability, which is good to see. But it isn't a clearing, if you will, of the backlog. Now, one of the other things alluded to in the article, it talks about will this be like summer of 2007 where all dates became current? Which is interesting. As we've talked about, a lot, and specifically last Friday, we covered some data from an article on Axios that talked about somewhere around 380,000 Indian nationals in an employment-based preference green card backlog. Um, wow, I mean, you're looking at if they were to clear that number, as we've talked about and estimated, 1.2 million if you count spouses and dependents would be cleared. Um, that's interesting. Now, is that going to happen? I don't think so. I think that's a very hopeful rumor. But again, that there really isn't a lot of signs that point to that being, a possibility. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Is there, um, something out there for you guys that leads you to believe, something otherwise? I'm just not sure that we could see something, like that go down. But back to the executive order for merit based. So let's look at all of these dominoes. Okay. Um, really sort of repurposing what the H1B visa is, defining it with a tightening of the specialty occupation definition, increasing the fees, increasing the wage determinations, utilizing, they said the best and brightest in the memo. And I think if you look at what does that mean? What does best and brightest mean? Okay. Not all tech workers from India are created equal. There are some really, really good ones. There's some really, really good ones. And then there's some really, really not so good ones. That's just the law of averages. The same can be applied to individuals from any walk of life around the globe, even those here in the US. Some are just better than others when it comes to their craft. Okay. And so when you start to think about what that means, best and brightest, you hear these words thrown out there, it really starts to point to a merit-based type system. Whether or not that's the case, I don't know. I mean, I think we're 41 days until the election. Very interesting to see a big push from the Trump administration to really strengthen and heavily scrutinize the H-1B visa, ban H1s that already have approval from entering into the country unless they can meet two exceptions that were provided in a list. I don't know. I mean, I think you look to see the restriction of the H's, and what does that mean? Does it point to H1s currently in the U.S. would be given, time earned, time spent in the U.S. towards a merit-based system? Would they clear it with some sort of new status, as we've talked about, the I-140 EAD, or as I've referred to it as the H-1B EAD? We see in S386 that's 2 years with an approved I-140. For me, as I covered in the H-1B EAD, I said individuals with an approved I-140 that have worked in the U.S. for a minimum of 6 years. How do you want to spin it? But ultimately, what we're looking for is advanced parole rights, something that we've talked about on this channel for several weeks. Freedom to choose, right? Freedom to choose your employer, freedom to choose how much you're paid, right? Those things I think are important. Um, they are a right and a liberty that we are given as U.S. citizens, as Americans, and individuals that come here that have been here 12, 13, 14 years, have paid taxes. This is their life. Living in this country is their life. They know no other way. Most of them have spent um, anywhere between their mid 20s to late 20s, now into their mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s. So the core earning years, okay, of their life have been spent in the U.S. hoping and waiting for permanent residency. And so that's why when we've talked about this backlog is atrocious, and that the per country cap that was put into place back in 1990 is no longer valid based on the current climate. So we need to modify that. I've been a big proponent of the merit based system. Do I think that the merit based system, though, can be enacted via an executive order? No, I don't think so. I think there's too many people that have too much at stake that would allow an executive order to implement a merit based system. But as we've seen with this current administration, it doesn't mean they won't try. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm a proponent of the merit based system. I want the best and the brightest to be allowed entry into the U.S. I'd love to see a revamp of our current system. I think that the H1B has been given a negative connotation, and it's not fair. So how do we do that? We have to change the way that it's looked at and the way that it's utilized. I've talked about it a lot. The H1B MDs out there, those of you who may be watching, those of you who support this channel, those of you who follow me on Twitter, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing on the front lines. Thank you for the work that you're doing in areas of the country that there aren't enough medical professionals. But the same can be said for IT workers in these large enterprises that have these digital transformation projects that are mission critical, and they can't find enough staff to augment it. So how do they do that? Well, we do that with the temporary foreign worker. We do that through the H1B. Okay, we do that through the OPT. We do that through the OPT STEM. It's just part of the staffing pipeline, and a lot of that was significantly magnified starting in 2000. Okay, so do I think an executive order for merit-based immigration is possible? Yes, but I will tell you that what I really don't think is that it's going to hold up, right? I think that you'll see, it be challenged immediately in the courts. I think that, you'll see it take an act of Congress for it to become law, which is very interesting if you go back to S386. And as we've talked about, and as we discussed yesterday, what does S386 do? Right? And kind of the steps around that, creating that awareness around S386. Well, I'll tell you three things S386 does is it eliminates a lot of the negative connotation around the H1B visa, the cheap labor H1B pipeline debate for the Indian integrators. The 50-50 rule that would be implemented would do that. It gives the Department of Labor really a lot more investigative authority. So if an employer has even one H1, they are able to audit those wages and those determinations to make sure that those H1s are being paid the prevailing wage determination as listed by the Department of Labor on the labor certified application. Okay, so that's really the big thing here is, are they paying the prevailing wage? Are the individuals working at the site that's stated on the LCA? And as we've talked about a lot with the home, if you're working from home more than 50% of the time, as silly as it sounds, you need to have an LCA for your apartment or for your home residence, wherever it is that you're working. So no, I don't think we're going to see an executive order, but there was something alluded to last week, right, where President Trump said 2 weeks. And based on the calculation, you look at that leads into the debate and what the timeline for that would mean. If he were to announce something, I would expect that would be announced leading into the debates. But the circle is very interesting. A lot of the dominoes that we've seen fall here recently are very interesting. and they point to significant reform, and a lot of it points to merit-based immigration. It just does. So really, we'll keep our eyes on that. Very interesting. We'll definitely keep our eyes on the visa bulletin as it comes out sometime. I'd say in the next uh, maybe 24 to 48 hours. I think that you can see that there's definitely something going on. I joked yesterday, maybe they're triple counting the alleged surplus. Um, who knows? But if there is estimated to be between 90 to 100,000 in family-based preferences, it's a good thing for those in employment-based. It will definitely, um, help eliminate some of the backlog. Not much. I mean, roughly 20K. So um, the last thing that I wanted to cover today was something that came out talking about Chris Wallace put out his topics for the first debate coming up. And so this kind of coincides with what I mentioned about the executive order leading into to the first debate. And so the topics are this, and I'll just kind of cover them here, which is the Trump and Biden records, the Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in our cities, and the integrity of the election. And so, we talk about the H1B, we talk about S386, we talk about the Greencard backlog, we talk about work authorization preferences, third-party process consulting. So we talk about a lot of those things here on this channel, immigration sort of being the big umbrella. Will we see immigration come up on the 29th? And when I look at these topics, it really comes down to if it comes up under the economy, right? Which would be jobs. Some of that may be under the Trump and Biden records as well in terms of the topics. Maybe this is where President Trump gets into rolling out the merit-based system that he's been a proponent of and discussed. I don't know. I would love to see immigration listed in these topics here, but I'm assuming that it will be covered under one of these two. But I'm really interested to see when the immigration debate does come up, how it's handled. Both have pretty extreme philosophies on immigration. Trump has proven here, President Trump has proven here recently that he is not a proponent of the temporary foreign worker under the H1B, specifically as it relates to that end client outsourced type placement. In the video where we covered Vice President Biden's policies on immigration, we see that he is a supporter of clearing the backlog. But also, I think it's worth mentioning he's very pro DACA and definitely very pro green card for illegal immigrants. He has been. He's proven that. Now, I'm not saying he's looking to hand them out, but just overall, his policies have proven that. We saw during President Obama's 8 years, very little was done on the H1B. There was some changes, but very few. It was a very quiet 8 years as it relates to the H1B pipeline and what we see, associated with the H's coming from India. That was something that we continued to see, really the continuation of that pipeline and the growth of it. So I did have a couple more questions from Twitter. I'm just going to read them very quickly. Do I see any movement in India priority dates for EB2 category? As I've talked about at the beginning of the video, you would think so, that would be a possibility based on the rumors of there being a surplus for the family-based preferences. So if anything, possibly, we've been in kind of limbo here. I would love to see the dates move at least 12 months once. I think that that's possible heading into October. Maybe that's why there is such a delay. But I'm not positive on that. I guessed yesterday that I would expect the numbers to remain the same. And if that were the case, I can only imagine what kind of tailspin that would send a lot of my followers into. So who knows what's going to happen there. And then let's see the last one. Would I please discuss why CIS hates Indians only, while anyone who gets GC can potentially steal a job from Americans? Yeah, the Center for Immigration Studies. I've covered some of their data. Jessica Vaughn. Um, they've really been on the assault here. And I think what happens is when you have this favorable movement, right? Because you have a lot of anti H1Bers out there, the cheap labor, the stealing American jobs. You have those out there. They are out there. But CIS, right? They've continued with their tweets and their publishings um, to prove that they are anti-Indian. I think it's very clear they're not hiding that. But what they are, and I want to be very clear with what my opinion is on what they are, is they are anti-Indian temporary foreign worker. Okay. Um, Now, that is probably 90% of the folks who are watching this, right? So, yeah, I think a lot of that is questionable. Fortunately, you have the Cato Institute, which I think has done a great job of combating the CIS rhetoric. I think that you have a few other organizations out there. Immigration Voice, of course, has tried to be that, but they have definitely teetered on the radical side, right? Which, and understandably so. No offense to them, as I've mentioned them several times. I think their platform and what they're looking to do is great. And as I've mentioned, the Greencard Backlog Coalition, I think what they've done has been noble. But what I will tell you is that the protests that have gone on in Florida, that is what's going to make the politicians take notice. The more coverage you get in the mainstream media about your cause, the more awareness it creates. I talked about it a few weeks ago that numbers speak, right? The more you organize in numbers, the better it is for your cause. The more money you have, the better it is for your cause. So, as politics are played out and as democracy works, those are two things that move the meter: voice in numbers and voice in dollars. And so if you have those two things, then you can definitely influence democracy. You just can. And so that's going to be, my little rant today for your guys' cause and what you're looking to do. But I hope to help support that, right? I think that my voice here on the H1B Guy platform here has been one that is pro H1B. But I'm also pro clearing the green card backlog. I'm pro third party consulting. I think it's necessary to large enterprise staffing augmentation. It just is. Like it or not, there are not enough American workers to fill the high tech jobs that are in the large enterprise organizations. They're just not. And if we don't fill them here on our soil, they will go offshore and they will be outsourced, whether that's to Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, India, Belarus, China. I mean, India, you name it, right? And so we have to be very careful with our protection of U.S. jobs and how we do that through the immigrant pipeline, specifically, in the specialty occupation category. So, don't have any other questions. I just wanted to say thank you. If you haven't already, please like this video. Please subscribe to the H1B Guy here on YouTube. It helps me to produce more content like this for you. Make sure you click the bell for notifications. If you want to see me do more live streams like this, please make sure you like this video. Drop me a comment, shoot me a direct message. I'd love to hear from you. If you're not following the H1B Guy on Twitter, it's at the H1B Guy. If you check out my website, the h1bguy.com, I think I have over 50 posts now covering H1Bs, covering S386, a lot of data, a lot of education and training, and a lot of opinions. I am just really, truly humbled by all of your support that I receive, all of the messages that you guys send me on Twitter. I just really appreciate it. I get to talk about something that I love and something that I'm very passionate about, which is technology, H1Bs, work authorizations. Thank you very much for your support. If you can share my videos, I'd really appreciate it. If there is content that you'd like to see me create, I am all ears. I just love to respond to you guys on Twitter in the form of videos. So if you give me something that I really like, I will definitely make sure to do an H1B Guy responds video to it. Abhijit, thank you very much. You don't miss a live stream, and I just appreciate that. I today I think I've had the most live streaming, double digits today. The channel is growing, and I have a goal, and that's to continue to talk about this on the H1B Guy platform. I want to show both sides. I do. I am moderate in what my political views are. I think that's very evident if you've been following this channel for any amount of time. I consider myself to be, uh, financially conservative and a little bit more liberal on the social issues. That's just who I am. It's how I see the world. Thank you. Your support means a lot. Watching and liking these videos, sharing them, interacting with me on Twitter, any help that you can give me to get more followers and subscribers, thank you. And it's through this interaction, through liking my content, and through subscribing. So Abhijit, thanks. Really appreciate your interaction and reaching out and your messages that you've sent me over the last few weeks. Andy, I hope so. I will tell you that each day that I get to put out a video, I'll tell you yesterday, the video that I put out had a lot of problems, and I learned to do some editing that I had not ever done yesterday. I hope you guys like some of the website overview videos that I'm incorporating and integrating into the content. I have a very basic setup here. Unfortunately, I don't have any high-end editing software. Hopefully, in due time, if I blow up and can really turn this platform into what I foresee it becoming, I can really tighten up a lot of my content, make it more professional for you guys. But I am raw. That's who I am. And so a lot of what you're going to get is the raw, long form, sit down essay content that I love to produce. The live stream, stuff here for me, I love doing it as well. I don't want to do too much of it. I definitely like to do these Q&As, once about every other week. But I need people like you, Andy, and I need people like Abhijit that are willing to come on the channel and do Stamp It Out Q&As with me. I've done 2 so far, and they've been extremely successful. So this is my call to anyone out there who has subscribed to me, who follows me on Twitter. If you are interested in coming on and doing a Stamp It Out Q&A with me, I like to do those on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. Please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. But Andy, thank you so much. Just really appreciate your support. And then last, I just wanted to say a thank you again to all of the subscribers, all of my followers, to my family who supports me, to all of my friends who take time to listen to me ramble. I just am so humbled, and I just really appreciate it. The last thing I wanted to mention is that if I can help you in any way, if I can give you peace of mind as it relates to your case or if you're an employer who is worried about, a case and needs some help, or you need some consultation as it relates to various work authorizations, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear how I can help you. You can find me on the H1BGuy.com. You can direct message me here through YouTube, and you can find me on Twitter at the H1BGuy.com. If you are interested in helping to produce the H1B Guy here on YouTube, there will be the way to do so in the description of this video and the live stream today. So just wanted to thank all of you again for your support. The H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.